Hey loves. You can tell that I've been crying when my scar from the time I get smashed in the face by a door is super bright red. I needed to change my space. I needed to change my energy because I was literally bawling. Like, I was doing one of those cries where it's like open mouthed and like maybe spit might fall out because you just don't even care. You're like literally just like, "Ah!" Like one of those kinds of cries. I was like, I'm alone in the house, so I was literally screaming, crying. And I needed to tell y'all how much magic there is in just bawling, in just like letting that shit all out, 100% all out. Because whenever you are frustrated or whenever you have met your match and you're feeling like, I'm at my wit's end, I can't anymore, I just can't, that's just, you feel the tears coming on and you're like, no, let me try something else, let me try to find a solution to this, let me just like calm down because it's not that bad, let me figure out blah blah blah. You know, you're trying to troubleshoot your own emotional reaction to external forces that are out of your control. And I find that it's usually things that we feel we are not in control of that we get the most frustrated by, that feel like the most negative experiences because we weren't able to do anything about it. And I got to a point, I was crying about my computer, by the way, and I was like, did Mercury just go into retrograde? What the fuck is this? Like, what happened? But I was crying about my laptop because since I got it, new laptop, very expensive, it decided to do an update, and I was like, okay, you're new though, this is kind of weird. And all of a sudden, the update didn't recognize that I even had a webcam. And I'm like, it's not one of those like, like 2001 webcams that you have to like plug into the computer. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like when webcams weren't installed on every computer, just like how there weren't cameras on every phone. There weren't webcams in every computer. So the webcam comes in the laptop, installed inside the laptop. There's no like, I don't know, like unplug it and plug it back in kind of feature. So this happens like right when I get it, and I had to restore my computer to an old version just so it recognized that there was a fucking webcam. And literally, I'm like going in circles with that stupid thing. This is months ago. Today, I opened my laptop after the most recent update, and for some reason, I'm trying to scroll and it won't let me scroll. So I change it to the other direction and it starts scrolling, and I'm like, what would be the point? What would be the actual point of changing that one feature? Of people who are used to scrolling this way and the page going with it versus scrolling this way and the page. I'm like, what would be the purpose of changing the direction of the scroll? I can't find a reason, but it was the most upsetting thing that I've ever experienced. I was like, okay, I need to go and just restore like I always do after every single update. I have no choice but to update my laptop because it doesn't give you a choice, or else it keeps coming back and saying you need to update, we have updates for you, or it does it without your fucking permission. So literally, I'm like, okay, let me just go do what I've always done because of the webcam issue. Let me go and restore to the previous. It's gone. I can't even restore to a previous version of Windows now. So I left some feedback for them. How? Literally how? I left some feedback and continued to try to troubleshoot on my own. And I got increasingly more frustrated. I'm getting the frustration tears back again. And I realized how important it is to let that shit out. And when a cry comes up, when the tears come up, how fucking healing it is to just go all the way into it. So like I said, I was like bellowing. I was like screaming in this house by myself, crying because I realized there's nothing else that I can do, and all my body wants to do is let out all of this frustration. I have this theory that because I've experienced this, so this is based on years of experimentation, okay? Theory. This is a solid theory that if you don't deal with your emotions now, they come back 3 times stronger to fucking haunt you. So for me, I'm like, for everything that is worth crying about, or even not worth crying about, for everything that you need to cry about, you have a certain number of tears that you need to get out. It's kind of like you have to meet a quota. And when my aunt passed away, or when my brother took his life, you know, I realized that I'm not going to ever find a time where I'm like, oh, I spent all of my tears. All of my tears are gone. You know, like, there's never going to be a time where I'm going to know the exact number of tears that I have to cry for those occasions. But there are times where it comes up, and instead of saying, I'm going to take care of this later, at my desk at work, I would leave, I would go to my car, and I would cry it out. Or I would email my boss and say, I have to go home. I'm of no use to you today. I'll put in an extra hour, you know, tomorrow or for whatever. But I'm no use to you today because I can't even concentrate on what my middle name is. You know, I need to get this out of me. It's like a fucking emotional exorcism. But it's also emotional exercise to a degree, because we don't often get to flex our crying muscle. We don't often get to flex our screaming muscle. I don't know when the last time you screamed is, and I mean really screamed. I mean not just like, ah, or like somebody's tickling you and you're trying to get away and you're, ah, and you're screaming. No, I mean like real screaming that does this to your voice after. The real screaming that pushes your body to limits where even when you hear it coming out of your body, you're hearing it and you're saying to yourself, that sounds awful. That sounds like this person is going through something horrendous, like completely painful, total suffering. And honestly, I think that part of releasing your emotional energy that has clearly built up and needs to be released, releasing that emotional energy helps you find more compassion for that suffering that you're experiencing. Because you don't really realize sometimes how bad it is, or how much it's been stacking up, how much all of these tears that you have yet to cry, that you want to get out of your body, that want to get out of your body, but you keep feeling like it's inappropriate, or I don't have time for that, or if I go that way, I will be blank. I will be depressed for a week. My eyes will be puffy for the rest of the day. I will be tired and exhausted after. I will be whatever the fuck it is. We put off the crying, we put off the emotional exercise, as well as the emotional exorcism, because we understand that the process of healing is a painful one, and it takes time. It takes energy expenditure. It takes rest. We need rest to be able to recover from the shit that we are expending our energies on. And being able to release and expose yourself to your own suffering, like actually seeing it and hearing it on the outside, helps you engage with what's going on the inside. So something that I've also been really excited to start playing around with is the idea that one of the first things that you need to start healing at all is to recognize your own suffering and feel the desire to relieve that suffering, but also feeling worthy of feeling better. So it's compassion and it's worthiness. And when we see things on the outside, like if you have a broken bone and the bone is fucking sticking through the skin, you see the bone, you see the blood, you see the flesh, you hear the snap, you see the pain, you hear the pain, you experience the pain. All of it could be like, if you didn't look at it, you wouldn't know how bad it was. You would just feel the pain and you would just hope that it goes away, or hope that maybe somebody else will see how bad it is and heal it for you, or do something for you to help you end your own suffering, right? But it's a fucking broke ass bone. So you can see it. It's in your external world. It's on the outside, and it's something that you can sense for yourself. When we have mental illness, or when we have other physical illnesses like herpes, for example, that you can't see for yourself, but maybe sometimes you experience some physical symptoms that you're unaware are part of the experience. So obviously with herpes, you have some itching as part of the experience, but like, I don't have any blisters. I don't have anything that looks like the typical herpes that I learned about in health class in high school that taught us for a whole, I think, 15 minutes about STDs and STIs and et cetera. Like, that was it. That was it. That was all I got, was like, if you have any kind of sexually transmitted anything, you're going to have warts and blisters and it's going to look gross. So I was thinking, okay, I should be able to see with my senses where the problem is. Where's the problem? Mosquito. I didn't see anything because there was nothing to see. And also, it's kind of hard to get a look down there. With mental illness, it's all in here. Anxiety produces certain physical symptoms and physical triggers. So like, you might find that your body is clenching up more of the time than not. Depression can also just feel like being exhausted and wanting to be in bed all the time, when it's really not being exhausted. It's really just being in such a low state that you don't find any reason to get out of bed. Mental illness has a couple of things that we, with our senses, can examine and start to understand if we know what to look for. It's like the herpes shit. I thought I knew what to look for, and I didn't see any of it, and so I thought, there's no herpes here. With mental illness, it's like, we don't know what to look for. We don't know what it looks like on the outside, so nothing to see here. But once you start seeing and feeling and experiencing, sensing it in your external body, not just in your internal spirit and your internal sensations, once you start to actually physically see it on the outside in the form of crying, like you can see my scar. You can see the little red of my scar that always lights up whenever I've been crying. When you see the crying and you feel the crying, when you hear yourself sobbing and hysterically sobbing. Like I said, I was screaming, crying by myself because I was so upset and frustrated and feeling like there's hopeless, like there is nothing that I could do. And feeling frustrated and upset and like there's nothing you can do describes a lot of mental health issues. So when you get to see that shit on the outside, when you have an emotion that rises and asks to be seen, like crying, like anger, that makes you want to smash the shit out of your laptop that's not working. I literally wanted to smash my laptop into pieces, you guys. Literally take it and just annihilate it. Start afresh. Whenever you experience these emotions asking you to externalize your experience of those emotions, you gotta exercise that emotional muscle. You have to literally have an emotional exorcism where you get it all out and you let it all hang out, because otherwise, how are you going to really see and really understand how much suffering you are experiencing? It's like when something is funny, you're not going to wait to laugh till later, right? Ooh, did I hit on something there? When something's funny, or when you're experiencing joy, you're not going to wait to smile until later. Because smiles and laughter is socially acceptable, right? So if we're having an emotional experience out in the world, in the external world, and we want to smile or laugh about it, we don't hold it in. We don't say, I'll do that later, because nobody wants to see that. But with crying and screaming, those are indicators of suffering, of internal suffering. And with kids, sometimes it's just like, oh, they're hungry, or they're tired, or whatever. With adults, sometimes we're hungry and tired, yes. And also, we have stifled those emotional muscles. So those emotional muscles have atrophied from childhood into adulthood after people have started telling us, stop crying in public, stop throwing a tantrum, stop screaming in public, stop showing other people the suffering that you're experiencing on the inside. And over time, we're like, oh yeah, that's not okay. even when I was a kid, and I didn't have any awareness of the emotions that I was experiencing, and the only way that I could let other people know that I was experiencing those emotions, because I needed somebody to do something about it. I needed somebody to see my broken bone and to come over and to help me. That was the purpose as a child of emotional experiences, right? Was not for somebody to validate that you were feeling that way, but for somebody else to see your suffering and feel compassion and desire to relieve you of that suffering. When we don't see our own suffering on the outside, and we don't just let it out when it comes out, we are stifling our own emotional energy. We are accepting and we are choosing suffering in that moment. We're saying, nah, I'm just going to suffer a little bit longer. I'm going to suffer until I can be alone and suffer a little bit more by myself, just less than I would have if I had done it in front of those people. The problem with that is if you don't let it out, then you're going to have to deal with it popping up later. It's like when you wake up in the morning and you see all of these dishes in the sink, and you're like, I thought we had a conversation last week. About how we weren't going to leave dishes in the sink. And the first thing that I do Monday morning is wake up and there are dishes in the sink. How could this happen? Why did this happen? I'm so frustrated. The whole reason I told people that I needed dishes out of the sink is because I'm the one who always does them. It causes me frustration. It makes me feel like I want to cry. And this morning, I'm seeing the dishes, and I really need to just cry it out. And you decide, no, ain't nobody got time for that. I gotta get dressed. I gotta go to work. I gotta put on my face. I gotta come home. I gotta make dinner. I have to make sure that everything is taken care of. And then I gotta go to sleep so I could wake up the next day and do the same thing. When we really want to have those release moments, I don't know who you are, and I'm sorry, this person is distracting me, so I'm going to hide my live video from them. Yes, there we go. I don't know who the fuck that was. When you don't release it, when you feel the need to, you end up going into work and barking at somebody else. And that is just for the littlest thing. Like, they took my stapler without asking. And you end up in the bathroom and you're doing like a 5 times crazier, obnoxious cry with your makeup going everywhere because you're like, this was too much for me on the day that I woke up with dishes in the sink. This is too much for me for them to take my stapler. You know how if you don't let that one little snowball just acknowledge the snowball and say, you're right, this does suck. I'm just gonna cry it out and hold it in your hands until it melts and just watch all of the suffering melt away in that emotional experience you have. That snowball you release and it starts tumbling throughout the day. And it keeps picking up momentum. It keeps picking up baggage. It keeps picking up all of these feelings that are soon going to be so big and so forceful that you cannot stop it. You cannot stop it, even if you're in front of other people, even if you're in public. That's how emotional breakdowns, public displays of emotional breakdown, PD, PDE, public displays of emotion, that's how they come to pass, because you didn't acknowledge those feelings the first time. I'm really feeling like I needed to release some PDE. Yeah. I really feel like I needed to release some of the buildup and some of the, I think maybe I was experiencing a little guilt or a little bit of shame or embarrassment, crying by myself in the house, screaming, crying in the house by myself. I experienced embarrassment. There's nobody around, but it's still that someone has told me multiple times, you know, the first few times that I needed to react that way to get that shit out of me, that comes back and that whispers in my ear, you sound pitiful. Don't let anybody else see that or hear that. You need to privatize. You need to keep it for you. You need to put it in a journal or wherever and close it up and put it away. And instead, I said, I need to move this energy. I need to release the shame around expressing my public displays of emotion. And I need to make it public. I need to just move the energy and move my space, get out of that space where I was feeling that way, and come here and let y'all know how fucking magical it is to just let it go when it asks you to. Let the emotion go when it asks you to. Because that's the best way to respect yourself and to respect your emotions. I'm really hoping that this weekend, when I start these self-love webinars, that we can get more into this and we can talk more about how to really show yourself love in a way that produces more confidence and more empowerment from expressing yourself. Because even this is just like a minor example of how one little thing that spiraled out of control really got me. But it was so magical too, to hear myself after say, you don't have to be embarrassed by that. You really needed that. You really needed that, didn't you? And that little voice of 2-year-old, 3-year-old me that was told from a young age to stop being so sensitive and to not cry and to throw my tantrums in a room by myself. That little 2-year-old, 3-year-old me was like, yeah, I really needed that. And my little me, my inner child me, needed adult me to acknowledge it and let it melt. And the way that I let it melt was by embracing it, embracing myself, kind of giving myself my own emotional hug of like, you don't deserve to feel this way. However, this is how you feel right now. And the best way to move past it is to move through it. So, for all of you who have been interested in following my modern magic for basic witches, I'm going to be posting this on YouTube, and I'm going to post the Google Classroom link, which is free. It's not really a link, it's just a code. If you go and you can find my classroom by using this code, I'm going to post this on YouTube because I feel like others really need to get their PDE on lock. People need to recognize that their PDE is important and really necessary. But I also think that it is a part of our magic as humans. It's a part of the magic of the world that we live in, which allows us to connect so divinely with those things within ourselves that feel much bigger than ourselves. When I was screaming and I was letting out, I was hearing my suffering out loud, it was like I could separate my actual emotional experience from seeing it and from hearing it. And that ability to connect more deeply with what you're going through and with the experiences that humans have by doing something that sounds awful. It was awful, you guys. It sounded terrible, but it allowed me to connect more with myself and with my inner child. And that, to me, is magical as fuck. And I also think it's a pretty basic way to show yourself some love, is to connect more with those emotions when they arise. I appreciate all of you, all of the babes who have been listening and who have joined me. I've been reading along the way. I'm sorry, I've been having these experiences too, because honestly, it can be so aggravating. Like, when will it go away? It'll go away when you acknowledge it and when you accept that it's there. I think that's kind of the answer. That's the takeaway for the day. But I'm really hoping that if you feel like you want any more clarity on the experiences and especially the emotional experiences that you've been having, that you reach out to me or you check out the link in my bio that has the card readings, because card readings are where it's at. Like, that shit, that guidance is the shit. I'm about to do a card reading for myself to see what I've been kind of storing underneath the surface that clearly needed to come out today. And I really encourage you, if this was hitting the nail on the head for you, I encourage you to go to my bio and click card readings so that you can find something that works for you and we can connect by just read me. We can connect by clarifying what's going on for you and confirming how it's going to serve you and your highest self, your ideal self, in the long run. I love you. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. You are deserving of all the love that you desire. And I hope you have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day. Woo!